Hello! So it's been a while since I've done a live that involves reviewing a book, or at least looking over a book. Mordenkaisen's uh, Tome is a book that I've been looking forward to, and all of us have been looking forward to, frankly. There's nothing new about that. Super stoked about it because, I don't say stoked, very excited about it because the amount of lore that was promised and that was delivered was phenomenal. I really enjoyed how they incorporated the elves, dwarves, and told us more about them and their society. And yes, we've read some books that talk about them, and yes, they've kind of elaborated it bits and pieces in, of course, the Player's Handbook and bits and pieces throughout all the other books. But this book is like the book that's like an encyclopedia on this. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a few things. So flipping the screen here and I'm going to show you. All right, Mordenkaisen's Tome of Foes. Now, you get right into it, and I love how, and I'm just going to talk about mostly the elves in this little thing, and maybe I'll go over a few other things. But as you can see, it jumps right into demonic cults and things like that, which is so cool because how many of us have been in, at least DMs, have been in situations where we're like, I just wish I knew more about them. By the way, those that are looking for tables and things like that for making your tieflings better, hello, we had the Asimar, or Asimar, depending how you say it, in Volo's guide, but then now you've got this right here where it kind of tells you more about how they, you can have tiefling subraces. There it is. By the way, I got a special one. It was a defective, and I don't really care. It's different from everyone else's, so it's kind of nice. I do love what they did with the Cambions. Um, okay, anyway, I can't find it right now. Anyway, let me get to what I was going to talk about, the elves. I personally think there's way too many elves, people playing them. By the way, so cool. Talking about the other demonic cults and things like that, and how the Cambions come into place with their demon lords. Oh, goody. It's fantastic. All right. Anyway, so when I first opened this book, I read the demons, and I already knew the cults and how they're going to talk about that. They showed some teasers, but when they start talking about elves in the book, I was like, okay, I'm paying attention. Tell me more about them. So they start going into about how the god Corellin was not really a god at the time. I don't believe he was just like a shapeshifter. He was a deity, I guess, but he was just a creature that could shape into other things. And Orcus was upset with him and thought he was annoying, and so he started this like war with him. And it was kind of like a joke for Corellin, but he ended up fighting him, and the blood of his body formed the first elves, and Loth was one of them. And here's all the elves right here, and it's awesome how it starts talking about how Loth spoke to the other gods and talked to them to kind of a bit of a rebellion against Corellin, and how he was kind of aloof, and they wanted this greater ability. And I just was like blown away how it just, I mean, you can go over it, but I like this part about the elven diaspora, which would make sense. Which would make sense because think about it. Let's say you have a campaign going, you have a bunch of players together, and then all of a sudden you use elf, and you're thinking, what are elves? They've lived a long time already. Most of them are in their 200th year because the first 100 years are like childhood. But they're basically as weak as like a 16-year-old boy human. It doesn't make sense, like they're level 1. It's because you could explain it with, as a DM, that they've been living in reverie for a long time, which I think is pretty darn cool. Okay. Alright, let's go into the next part. So, it talks about their adolescence, how they age, and their age and death, and how that works. I think that the elves like whole section was fascinating because I have never seen that before. And of course, it tells you more about the elf deities, but I mean, thank you. It also talks about like the dark deities and how that works. And then one of my favorite parts is when it starts talking about the different gods and explaining them in detail and what each of them are really over, which to some people don't really care about, but to me, I love detail. Okay, let's get on with that. This talks about the Dark Elves. I think. See, I'm just recently reading. What is it called? Bloody heck, it's hot. So I'm like, my brain's not thinking. You know the books. Everyone knows the Drist series. I can't think of Homecoming. No, that's a different one. Homeland. All right. Great book. I loved how they talked about the drow. This really just went into a great detail about how the drow work. But then I love this part, which I'd never heard of them before, and I know this is sad for a DM to admit. I knew about the Raven Queen, but I didn't know about the Shadar Kai and how they're basically elves and they live in this shadow realm. And I didn't know much about the Raven Queen other than she exists. But looking at these guys, can you just see them and think, man, I want to go there and fight them. At least that's just me. And of course, we love the Eldari. Those that love them, those that hate them. I think that they're really neat having winter, spring, summer, and fall and having their attributes is interesting. I think that can be a lot of fun. And also, it tells you how to play a drow and kind of get that into the story. For instance, if you roll a 6, you were among a group of surface raiders that was ambushed and you were captured. During years of captivity, you learned that most of what lost priestesses taught about the outer world was lies. Now you're experiencing the truth for yourself. I love these tables. I love it. Gives me ideas for creating characters that's not just overdone and hackneyed. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about the dwarves in Duragar. I love dwarves. I've never played a dwarf. Sorry, gotta stable that. I love dwarves. I think that they can be a lot of fun. I've never played one, but as long as they're Moradin-loving men that travel underground and elsewhere in search of gold and all sorts of things, it can be interesting. I mean, just looking at this picture alone gets me a lot of ideas. How they've got this big dragon head it's above the hearth, and everyone's kind of drinking and standing around. It's like a good old Hobbit story. I do love they have added the same type of situation. They talk about the gods. They talk about the dragons and how they've had this issue with the chromatic dragons and others. And then it talks about their rivals, the Duragar, which is essential if you're going to run any kind of campaign that ends up in the Underdark, because the Duragar are not to be messed with. My campaign that I was running ran through the Underdark, and it was a sticky situation for those that watched, but they got pretty lucky with the Duragar. They only met just a couple. And then it talks about clans and how they can work together, which is great for role-playing. You have this whole system worked out for you so you can really get a good story going. This one in particular, I said I was going to talk about just elves, but I think I'm just going to go through the book as it is. The Gith and their endless war. This chapter, I recommend getting this book and reading it, whether PDF or otherwise. Talking about, I loved and I studied up as much as I could, but I wish I had this when I was doing my Underdark campaign. That section of the campaign, because the Githyanki and Githzerai, this talks about their Lich Queen and how the Githyanki serve and how they live in this basically flotilla, this like flying base city type thing, and they go and raid the other the other places and try to other like material realm and elsewhere to get slaves or whatever. But it talks about how they were abandoned, not abandoned, pretty much abandoned by their gods, and they don't really know where they came from, but they sided with the Githyanki, I forget her name, hold on, it says it right here, the revered Queen Vlakith, I believe. Oh, that's a city. Everything concerning the Githyanki. Oh no, that's not the city. Yeah, so she's the queen, and I believe she's a lich, which is actually pretty awesome. And I love that they ride dragons. They've got their great silver swords. Don't carry one if you're a smart person. And they've got this whole. I love this part right here. Little things like this. Knights, a breed apart. I am her will made manifest. I am her unsheathed sword, and I am master of dragons. I am the fate of the worlds. I am the knight of Lakith. Ever may she reign. I just love this whole this war in the the astral plane and the abyss and all these places that they go to with the Githzerai, and they've got their monasteries and their floating citadels and their order in the chaos that is that battle. They are a very interesting group. I'm not going to go into so much more. This one talks about halflings. This one talks about how their adventures work and their parties, and then it talks about gnomes, which is fascinating. I definitely recommend a read. I'm not going to go over 10 minutes. I just wanted to quickly get this going. But next time I'm going to cover this grand section called the Bestiary. To give you a little bit of a teaser, those that haven't had a chance to look at it, I'm just going to show you a bit of this beauty. Now, Volo's Guide to Monsters, I feel like didn't have enough. I was craving more. So when they released this with everything they talked about previously, it really fills it out nicely. So please give it a chance. I will come back later and I'll watch. Well, sorry, watch. I'll show this to you. And thank you for joining the live. I will see you next time, and we'll talk more about the demon lords and the different monsters that you can mess up your players with, like this guy. All right. Anyway, appreciate you very much. I will see you all around. Goodbye. Thank you, and may your rolls always be natural ones, but not natural ones. Toodles.